MyFantasySportsTalk.com.
What's up, guys? Missed you guys. Just back in time for the holiday season and spreading the cheer and joy like just two big jolly Santas here. Myself, Brandon Reed, and Dan Shaw are going to carry a big bag of mailbag questions right straight down through the chimney this week. So glad you could join us. Glad you're back with us. We've been kind of taking a little bit of break hiatus, but a lot of stuff going on. You had the holidays. Dan got married. Oh yeah, by the way, all that going on. We took a trip to Orlando, and it's been busy time of year. So finally getting to sit down and podcast chat with you guys again, and we got a lot to talk about this week, Dan Shaw.
Yeah, I got a lump of coal early. We'll get into that, but yeah, man, I'm just getting nothing but coal this year. Not even just our league. I didn't even tell you about the other leagues I was in, and it's I'm glad to be here. And I guess I don't know. I'm just here. I showed up. Let's go.
So I really only play typically the last couple of years in one fantasy league, and that's the MFST fantasy league where all the competition is. This year I played in three. Well, it's not true. I've been playing in two. The MFSD Fantasy League, a work league that is a money league. And then I picked up another league, one of our former writers this year too, that Dan Schalk is in as well. So 3 leagues. I'm appearing in 3 title games next week. So it's just my year, Dan. It's just my year. I mean, I know you tried hard, but it's just not your year. It's the year of the new breed.
Yeah, I guess that was my year. Last year is when I was winning all the leagues, and this year I lost every semifinal match I was in. So it's just the way fantasy works. Even if you have the best team, I know my team was the best in our league. It was a bad week, and that's just the way fantasy works. And the damn Carolina Panthers defense and 2-point conversion returns being a new rule in the NFL. I curse you, Roger Goodell. I curse you. Okay.
Drew Brees, your quarterback, really needed to score more than 6 points.
Yeah, he's cursed. Cursed.
So let's just talk about the backstory of what really happened for the podcast peeps at home. So you got beat by our boy, Nick Pertins. How about that? That's number 1 sore spot for you. Number 2 is what you just referenced, the pick 2 return by the Carolina Panthers defense. So the game was virtually tied. I think Dan was up by a little bit going into the Monday night over Nick Pertins. The thing is, Nick Pertins had 1 player left. That was the Carolina Panthers defense. Dan Schalk had 1 player left. That was Drew Brees' quarterback. So we all know how that game went down Monday night. But basically, the game was decided and won, and the semifinals and championship matchup was determined on that pick 2 return over Drew Brees by the Carolina Panthers defense. Well, they counted the points originally. Then somehow overnight, Sunday night or Monday night, ESPN took them away. And Dan Schalk's going to the championship matchup, winning and beating Nick Pertins by a half a point. Okay, so we all knew that was wrong. So emails were made. ESPN finally corrected it, and Nick Pertins is advancing to the championship matchup. And I still can't get over the way it all went down, Dan. Him having 1 player left being the Carolina Panthers defense, you having 1 player left being Drew Brees, and just the way that game went down, Drew Brees threw a total of 2 picks. Carolina got a couple of big sacks late. It was just an amazing game for it to come down like that. I was just astonished.
Yeah, once in a lifetime. And I told you before, I wasn't worried going into the game. I didn't think twice about it. Even the first half, I didn't even check fantasy. I didn't think anything. Basically, Drew Brees needed to throw 1 touchdown pass. And if you're going to tell me Drew Brees is going to play this week and not throw a touchdown pass and be like, okay, yeah, I do not believe you. But that's exactly what happened. And not only that, but he threw a pick. And then that whole pick 2 nonsense. That was... it's just a bunch of nonsense. And then not only that, but then just the whole drama surrounding all of it where I wake up Tuesday morning and, oh, wait, I did win and I won by 0.5 points. That's pretty cool. I like that. I'm going to win the championship again. Emails were made because I did, you do some digging and you see, okay, well, the scoring settings say this should be points.
You knew it was
I
wrong.
did. And I mean, I was upfront about it, even with you guys. I was actually worried when the scoring changed that things were going to be accused my way because I'm the commissioner of the league, and whether or
And
not
we've
I
got the history
changed
of that. Let's tell the folks
No.
how the 2016 MFST Fantasy Football Championship went down. You lost, and then a stat correction put you ahead by half a point to put you in the championship game 2 years ago against me at that time. So there's a history there.
But it's coincidental. I mean, that was an ESPN stat correction again. I mean,
Stop playing
tough.
close games.
Yeah.
I'm cruising. I don't know what your problem is. Stop playing close games.
So anyway, it was yesterday was very emotional for me. It was an up and down roller coaster. So I'm glad it's over. I just want the NFL regular season of fantasy to be over. I need it to end.
It is for you. It is. You're done. Don't worry about it no more. Okay.
Well, I have third place games. I gotta show up.
Okay, so the other part of this story is that you and Nick Pertins made a big trade back in week 4 or 5 that sent David Johnson your way, and you traded away Kenyon Drake, Doug Martin, maybe some other pieces. But anyway, you guys made a big trade, and everybody in this league was like, "You fleeced Nick Pertins. What is Nick Pertins doing?" So how crazy is it now that Nick Pertins beat you with said players? He's moving on, and you're going home.
Yeah, well, I mean, I felt bad for Nick when we made the deal just because everybody was kind of attacking him like, you made such a terrible deal. And it really was. I thought it was a pretty fair deal. He had justification for it. He wasn't high on David Johnson.
Rightly so. Luckily, David Johnson came back over midway through the season or so, but he started out sucking.
Yeah, and I mean, not even that the players I gave up, Kenyon Drake and Doug Martin and others, it's not like they've been great, but his team has, whether you want to believe it or not, the Pertins team has depth. I mean, he's up and down his lineup. I mean, you can make the case for starting a lot of his bench players. So I like what he did, and, he was able to best me. And, Nick's a fan of the show. I mean, he's probably our number one fan, I would say. So if I'm going to lose to anybody, I'm glad it was him. And I just hope he can, avenge me by beating you. So I don't know. That's what I'm hoping for. We'll see.
If I lose to Nick, it's not going to be a big deal to me. I would rather lose to Nick than anybody else. Just because of the way it went down, and then plus Nick celebrating, the birth of their first child, Nick and Judy's first child this year. So it's been a big year for Nick. And if he caps it off with his first MFST fantasy football championship, then I'm not going to be too upset at that. But because I'm happy it's not you, I'll be honest with you. And that's a message for Casey Birch too. I don't know where you got the idea that I'm the biggest trash talker in the league, Casey. That is the commish, Dan Schalk. So I don't know, roles or reversals. I don't know what happened there, but I'm just glad it's anybody but Dan Schalk, to be honest with you. But I'm really hoping I win. But Nick's got a pretty decent team. Andrew Luck, Kenyon Drake, Doug Martin, Kenny Galladay, Alshon Jeffrey, Travis Kelce, Deshaun Hamilton, Panthers D, Brett Maher, his kicker, which I was going to say, ironically, that if you would have beat him, it probably was because your Dallas Cowboys kicker got him -2 last week. I mean, come on. Then he's got some decent depth on the bench. Larry Fitzgerald, Cameron Brate, Jalen Samuels. He picked up Robbie Anderson, which I finally gave up on, which he had a pretty decent week last week too. So I'm not going to be too upset if it's Nick Pertins. I'll congratulate him. Like I said, I've already won. Spiritually, my spirit and heart has done good. That it's not going to be Dan Schalk. So let's get into the mailbag questions, and we're going to start off. I'm going to skip down to the last one that you have on the list, Dan. I'm going to start out number 1 since we're hot and rolling and talking about it. It's from our man, Nick Pertins. And I told you before the podcast, man, I've been so slammed at work. I haven't even read these. I have no idea what any of them say. So pardon me while I get through it, especially this one, because it's a long one, because it's Nick. Well, fellas, you have complained about my lengthy questions. This may be the worst yet. First of all, before we get into it, Dan and MFST, you are a class act. Absolute class. I'm sure you're going to talk about it at length because it's pure drama, but I wanted to say I contacted ESPN directly, and they told me the league manager of the league had already contacted them and opened a trouble ticket about the issue. I'm assuming that is you, Dan. For you to do that, knowing you would rightfully lose because the Panthers' defense is so good, is commendable. knowing that, it calmed me down in the situation where that was very upsetting. It was very upsetting because I wanted to beat the best, and you are the best. I mean, okay. I enjoy the fantasy insight you always give, and I know it is brought with the utmost research, intelligence, and respect. Thank you, Dan. I'm sorry I had to give you the beatdown. As for Brandon, I'm the second best at least, right, Nick? Talk about me here. Good luck, buddy. You're going to need it. What? Outside of your running backs, your team is so bad. What is he talking about? See, Nick's getting crazy now. Really, really bad. You think Andrew Luck is going to get a single digits game again? Yeah, I do. I really do. Do you want to borrow my wide receivers for this matchup? No, I dropped your wide receivers, Nick. I kid. I'm looking forward to taking the crown. And if Dan wasn't an option, I would want Ryan Thomas. Just kidding. I would want it to be you. You're the man too. Yeah, good. Yeah, we're back on track. I feel like this is going to be a North Memphis versus South Memphis gang fight. You're right. This is going to be like Parkway Village versus Orange Mound. Dan has no idea what we're talking about, but I know you do, Nick. This is going to be Parkway Village versus Orange Mound in this MFSD Fantasy Football Championship game. Good luck, Brando. I will be back next week with my acceptance speech. Appreciate you guys. Go MFST. That is Nick Pertins. And he wasn't lying about being the most lengthy one yet, but he had a lot to say, a lot of drama, like Nick said.
Yeah, I mean, Nick and I exchanged some emails yesterday. It's tough to be put in that shoe. Like what we talked about, I was the victor yesterday, and I felt good. But at the same time, there was a loser in that, and that was Nick. And knowing that he had rightfully won, it was I could only imagine how upset he probably was when he saw that. You go to bed winning, and then you wake up losing. So fantasy, we take it seriously. I know this league is just for fun, but there's a lot of pride on the line, and just between all of us, you want to win. So his first email was a little bit rougher than the rest, I'll say that. But Nick, I think he kind of the kind words mean a lot, and I still would have preferred to win. But I appreciate that. And gang fight, that's cool. I mean, maybe you guys can meet up and actually throw down and like tape that. That'd be pretty cool too. But good luck to both of you guys. And I think it's going to be a close battle.
Channel 7 News Team. So, I don't know how to respond to Nick about my team being terrible. Where you been, Nick? I was basically the number one seed all year long. And that's what I was telling Casey. Did y'all guys not see what happened to me this year? First of all, TJ Yeldon was a great pickup, but he was doing awesome when Fournette was not in the game. And then Carlos Hyde was putting up double-digit points per game. Then he got traded, and that was just erased. I'm not sure he'd stepped on the football field since going to Jacksonville. So, I mean, I was really deep at one point with Todd Gurley, Joe Mixon, Carlos Hyde, and TJ Yeldon, and then not to mention Tyreek Hill, Deshaun Watson. So my team has kind of fell apart. And I've been a little worried over the last month because they have been slipping and falling, but it's all about survival. And I'm like I said before, I'm glad it's you in the championship game, Nick. So far, these MFST fantasy seasons have come down to so many crazy ways. And Dan and I have met in the championship of so many leagues. It's really surprising. And I really thought this was going to be another one, but just a perfect matchup. I enjoyed watching it Monday night and how all that went down with Carolina and Drew Brees. So, but Dan did know it was wrong. We all knew it was wrong because I don't know where those points went. And honestly, I thought Drew Brees should have lost points on the interception. I know that's the rule, and not that he doesn't, but he should. You throw a pick, you should lose points. I don't care if it's a untimed down or what. But so it was just crazy the way it went down. But we're gonna enjoy it. We're gonna enjoy this championship game. And like I said, if I lose, I won't be so upset that it's to you, Nick, and hope things are going well. We'll have to get back at you here, shortly after the holidays. I doubt we do a show next week, being Christmas and everything like that. But hopefully between Christmas and New Year's, we can get back at you. So I want your feedback, win or lose. I don't care what happens. So we can hear from you again and wrap the year up the right way, crowning an MFST fantasy football champion. So, anything else for Nick? It was so long. I don't know if we're leaving out any real questions or not. I think it was just more of a statement by Nick.
Yeah, he's probably just soaking it in. He's soaking in the victory.
And he kind of came from nowhere, right? I mean, he was barely struggling to make the playoffs halfway through the season, right? He hadn't been like a top tier team, has he?
Yeah, no, I mean he was kind of middle of the pack. Always had a winning record, but it was always between 1 and 2, 3 games around 500. So he kind of had an up and down year, and it's just been he's had the players, I guess, each week kind of just go off. I mean, Andrew Luck has been a consistent player, but his running backs, I mean, you look at them, Kenyon Drake and Doug Martin. You wouldn't be surprised if they got you 2 points one week, and I also wouldn't be surprised if Kenyon Drake got 25 this week. So it's kind of weird how they go up and down. And I think you have positions. Anthony Ferkser, if he gets 0, I'm not going to be shocked. So I think it's going to be a close battle. So we're gonna see a duel out on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, 3 straight days.
It's that time of year. Appreciate the question, Nick. Let's move on and answer the next one from Jay Price. Championship help. With Tyler Boyd most likely out, who would you go grab off the waiver and start? Doug Baldwin, Deshaun Hamilton, Antonio Callaway, or DJ Moore? 1 point PPR, says Jay Price. So just real quickly, I mean, I maybe Doug Baldwin. I'm kind of surprised some of these guys may even be available in your league, Jay. I'm not sure how big your league is. I've held on to Antonio Callaway the whole year, and I've just given up hope, although he's been okay as of late. But the guy I'm probably going to go there, and like I said, I'm surprised these guys are on your waiver wire, but I'm probably going to go with DJ Moore. Just because Carolina is going to be playing Atlanta, and I think they could. Well, the quarterback situation that does change things a little bit. But I look at DJ Moore, and he's got big play capability. I mean, he scored about close to 30 fantasy points in just a game about a month ago. So I think he has some big play capability. And Atlanta's defense just traditionally is just not good. So that's one I'm probably going to look at. Dan, what do you think?
I would be tempted to say Doug Baldwin. I think he's probably the safest bet now that he's back kind of healthy. But if you want to go for kind of a risk, I would go Deshaun Hamilton. His back-to-back 7 reception weeks. He's now the number one. He's overtaken Cortland Sutton now that Emmanuel Sanders is gone as the number one receiver. So I like Hamilton. I think he scored a touchdown in one of the last 2 games and back-to-back seven receptions in each of his last 2. So he's going to be getting targets and he's going to be getting the ball. So in a PPR league, I would go Hamilton, but the safe bet to me is
1 point PPR. So that's an average of at least 7 points right there over the last several weeks for him. What's your confidence level in Antonio Callaway at this point?
He's touchdown dependent. Last week he was able to score, and I think he got 14, 15 points. I actually own Callaway in a couple leagues, but it's hit or miss. It's either he's going to score that touchdown or he's going to have 2 receptions for 13 yards. So it's kind of tough. The reason I've kept him is because of that big play potential. I feel any week he technically could connect with Baker Mayfield and hit a 70-yard bomb, and that's gonna, in a league with bonuses like that, that's huge. But it's just it's so hit or miss with Callaway. I wouldn't want to trust him.
Yep, that's what he's dependent on, right? Yep. No, I've been there. I know what that's all about. I really hung with him in a lot of weeks and played him in a lot of weeks, but. As far as DJ Moore, with Cam Newton being out, with their quarterback role falls to what Taylor Heineke,
yeah, of Old Dominion. Loved his game film. I remember him from years back.
So can he run a team and put up points this week against Atlanta?
We both watched that Monday Night Football game. I don't know if you noticed this, but whenever Cam Newton threw the ball, it looked like his shoulder was just jacked up. I mean, his technique, his footwork, and his arms was terrible. And so I don't think it could be worse than what we saw on Monday night. So why not? I mean, they're going to throw the ball and they're got to throw it to somebody.
Yeah. So I don't know if we helped you out much there, Jay Price. But I mean, it depends on a lot of things. I would say DJ Moore, except for the quarterback situation. I don't know. Doug Baldwin coming back off injury. Deshaun Hamilton being just about the only guy left there. Antonio Callaway, big play potential. I don't know. But I'm really kind of surprised some of those guys are available in your league. But good luck. Pick up a couple of them and just see how the week plays out. Let's go to the next one. Ellis Howard says, I've been cursed by injuries at the quarterback position all year. Jimmy G and Wentz. and I have to rely on Nick Mullen lately. Ooh, he hadn't been doing bad, really. I still made the third place game, but I am tempted to pick up Josh Johnson off waivers and Mullen playing the Bears D. Thoughts, Alice Howard? What do you think, Dan? Would you?
Yeah,
just because that Bears D.
I don't like either option with matchups. I mean, even the Redskins, they play Tennessee, and that's not a good defense you want to play in fantasy. I mean, Titans are pretty stout. But the reason I would say, yeah, probably go Josh Johnson is just because you're going to get running yards. He's almost had 50 in back-to-back weeks. I think it was like 49 and 47, respectively. So, if he can get you 4 to 5 points just on the ground, the little that he's probably going to get you through the air is comparable to what Mullins is going to get against a stout Bears defense. So, yeah, I would roll Josh Johnson out there and hope that he, does it with his legs.
I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to say stick with Nick Mullins, who I've seen do some pretty decent things, and he has some pretty good weapons there, particularly George Kittle, which he loves. He's just nailing George Kittle all over the field, and this game is not in Chicago, so I'm saying don't overthink it and go with the guy who's rarely playing. Dan mentioned the running yards, but Washington's not scoring. They're not doing anything offensively. They're not really running the ball either, period. So I think if the defense can kind of clue in, which the Tennessee defense will, on the quarterback position, I don't see much production out of that. So what I'm saying is don't overthink it and go with a guy who has a little bit more experience under his belt now, playing at home in the warm California sunshine as opposed to cold Chicago Soldier Field. So we split there. I don't know what to tell you, but good luck to you, Ellis. The next one comes from Ray Michaels. I have Gurley and need to decide between my second back, Derrick Henry or Chris Carson. Man, at this point, I know you got Chris Carson, Dan. No, do you? No, you got Chris Thompson. But man, I can't stray away from Derrick Henry at this point. First of all, you better hope when you're in the same situation I'm in, Ray, and that you better hope that Gurley even plays, or at least plays half the game to get you something. Gurley had like 15, 16 points in the first quarter of the game this week. So I was loving it, but you better hope he plays. But I cannot go against Derrick Henry at this point. I saw him do it late season last year, what he's done the last 2 or 3 weeks. I'm not going to go against Derrick Henry. I'm going to stick with that against a pretty bad Washington team.
Yeah, we're gonna go opposite again. I think Henry's not going to be able to do it continually, and Chris Carson has quietly been putting up some monster numbers: 120 and a touchdown last week with 6 receptions. So if this is a PPR league, I'm definitely saying Chris Carson. But the week before that, he had 90 yards and a touch. The week before that, he had 70 yards on almost 6 yards a carry. So Chris Carson is doing it. So I'm confident in his abilities. And if it is a PPR league, he does still have that dynamic in the receiving game where Derrick Henry really doesn't. So I'm going Chris Carson.
And they have a home matchup against Kansas City. So another somewhat porous defense. So you have a decision there to make. Ray, good luck to you. The last one this week comes from Lindsay Landsman, and he's looking for daily fantasy. The question goes is this: any sleeper daily fantasy plays for the weekend? Dan, what do you think? Who's on your radar?
Yeah, I got one name for you, and it's Kalen Ballage, the running back for the Dolphins. Frank Gore is out. They don't plan on giving Kenyon Drake any more rushing carries, so Ballage is stepping right in to Frank Gore's role. He's going to get 15 to 20 touches, rushing attempts in the game this week, and he's probably pretty low cost comparative to what some other backs are. And last week he was able to rip off a 75-yard touchdown run, had over 100 yards. So now with a full workload and a cheap figure next to his name, I would say Kalen Ballage is my value DFS play.
So let me ask you about the aforementioned Josh Johnson. What do you think? Could it be a value play?
Yeah, especially for the quarterback position, I would imagine he's probably not high on the list. And what I also like about that is, I don't know about you, Brandon, but in fantasy during these type of weeks, I like having like a guy on a Saturday game where there's only 2 games. So it makes those Saturday games a little bit more exciting to me. And that's something that I like. it's something that I looked at this week on Monday night. I'm like, heck yeah, I got a Monday night Drew Brees matchup. That's going to look good to me. It ended up being a crushing Monday night. But this is Saturday, so you still have a couple days to get over it of more football.
Well, and there's going to be a couple of guys on my list here. Number one, a guy I kind of been hanging on to, and I'm going to play him this week because he has such huge big game potential, but he could be complete bust for you, but should be low value, is Traquan Smith for New Orleans. They're going to be back at home this week, playing Pittsburgh, but they're going to be back at home. So he just has such big, and he's due for a big game like he's had. I mean, he's had about 30-point games a couple of different times this year. The other one I was looking at here, I got a couple of names for you. Number one is going to be another guy who is on my team, but we have a injury situation in Detroit with Kerryon Johnson not playing. So you may have a decision to make about possibly LeGarrette Blount, maybe Theo Riddick, but also Zach Zenner, who did some work last year. So none of those guys should be ranked very high in fantasy, but they are playing Minnesota. So that's just something to, pay attention to if you need like a low value flex play, just need someone to pick up that could do some damage and some work. So I don't really have anyone else in mind specifically. I would just say look at the injury reports and see who might be getting some additional time on the field this week, as maybe one of those just garbage, flex plays that you can just spend, $3,800 on or something like that. So, well, that's all I got. Well, that's it. It's going to wrap up the mailbag segment. Big championship game coming up this week. Myself, Nick Pertins, for the MFST Fantasy Football Championship. So that's going to wrap up fantasy football season for us as far as taking mailbag questions and really discussing it on the show, Dan. The season has flown by.
Yeah. So now, podcast-wise, we're going to transition to fantasy basketball. Some exciting news for MFST as we those who saw our fantasy football rankings on the site this year. I was part of Fantasy Pros and the expert consensus rankers. I have been invited to do that for the baseball season coming up. So we're going to be able to cover fantasy baseball a little bit more with the help of Fantasy Pros. Those guys do a great job over there. So that's exciting. So just because fantasy football is ending doesn't mean my fantasy sports talk isn't going to help you, through all of the fantasy seasons basketball. I don't know right now, Brandon, if you looked, but I beat Nick Pertins last week in fantasy basketball, and that made me feel pretty good. So I had to mention that at least once on the show.
Well, I think that's where you went wrong. I mean, it was just kind of payback there. I would have rather lost the early season basketball matchup and won the fantasy football semifinal, but I hadn't really been paying too much attention to the fantasy basketball because my team is just not that good. I mean, I'm 6-3, but I'm getting beat again this week, and my team is just not that good. But Draymond hadn't played like the first 2 months of the season. Kawhi is so up and down. I mean, he'll play 2 games and not play the next 2 games. So my team is just not real stout this year. So I'm not looking forward to real big things in the fantasy basketball season this year. But yeah, that's it. But we can't start talking fantasy basketball. Please do. We've been neglecting fantasy basketball because we've been on such a hiatus here the last couple of months as the NBA season has kicked off since Halloween or so. But please submit the NBA fantasy basketball questions. We'll get right back into that when we pick things up for the new year. So cannot wait for that. Next champion we crown will be a MFSD NBA basketball champion coming up in, what is that, about late April? So check it out. Submit the questions and submit anything else that you want to talk about to my fantasy podcast, myfantasysportstalk.com. For my co-host Dan Sharp, I am Brandon Reed. Until next time, later. Peace.